Wednesdays at 8, you know where to find this guy, Ryan Thomas, the host of the Thomas Take Sports podcast, as I recap and react to the Buffalo Bills action each and every week. Wednesday nights at 8, live on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network. You can tune in to Thomas Take Sports Podcast. You can also find my podcast on Facebook, YouTube, as well. Follow me on Twitter. Greatly appreciate the support at Ryan Thomas Take. And what a game week 3 brought. I'm going to dive into what I noticed from the Buffalo Bills 37-3 effort against the Washington Commanders, as well preview and try to predict as best as I can, of course, the Buffalo Bills' massive upcoming game, week 4 at home against the 3-0, undefeated for now, Miami Dolphins. Let's get right to it. So, of course, we have to start off with what happened. Well, what happened against the Washington Commanders this week for the Buffalo Bills is Buffalo's Mick D defense. I'm not talking Mickey D's. I'm not talking McDonald's. Of course, Mick D refers to Sean McDermott, the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And you know what? I'll be quite honest with you guys and gals out there that are tuning in. I noticed quite a lot of differences week 1 and week 2 with this defense, but they didn't necessarily materialize in the form and fashion that I thought they would. Obviously, against the Raiders, they only allowed 10 points, but certain aspects of plays, blitzes, linebacker blitzes, Jimmy Garoppolo not hit nearly as often and as early as poor Sam Howell. Man, this kid had no chance against this Buffalo Bills front seven. And I want to take into consideration the fact that when I look at a lot of quarterbacks over the years, guys that have great movement, right? We see a lot of quarterbacks that have a repertoire, if you will, inside the pocket of moves that allow them to avoid a rush, moves that allow them to evade the pass rusher, evade the pressure. And Sam Howell, that's the one aspect of Sam Howell's game that he has not had to refine yet. And he's got absolutely none of that in terms of moves that he can rely on that can help him avoid the rush. And essentially, that's what allowed Buffalo to be able to attack Sam Howell to the tune of 9 sacks in this game. And to me, yes, this was a 37-point effort from the Buffalo Bills as a team, 7 of which went to A.J. Epenesa's pick 6, 30 points went to Buffalo's true offense. But this was a defensive masterclass by Sean McDermott, calling the plays on the defensive side of the ball, being more aggressive and utilizing the strengths of the players that he has on that side of the ball at his disposal. And to say, this was the easiest week to put together my takeover player of the game, players rather, would be an understatement. I mean, putting this list of 3 players together as I have for you guys and gals every week since I started my show, 6-7 years back, I honestly have never quite been this excited to dive in to the 3 takeover players of the game, and they're all on the defensive side of the ball. We will talk tonight about one player on the Bills offense that I've been talking about every week since the season started, but we're in this process together as far as, keeping the Bills Mafia in the know of what to look out for in the future with their team and what to look out for and what they should be noticing now in regards to their team. So let's get right to it. The 3 takeover players from yours truly, the Ryan Thomas takeover players of the game. Last week, the Bills defeating the Washington Commanders 37-3. And at one point, dare I say it felt like I was watching a game out in Orchard Park with the maroon seats that were added. Obviously, I'm being a little bit facetious there in saying that. This game turned into a home game very quickly when Washington, appeared as if in the second half they had no chance. The Washington football fans were leaving the stands, we're going home, and it was a blue crowd, right? People wearing blue, people wearing red. We turned it into a very light attendance Buffalo Bills home game, which is a precursor to the heavily attended Week 4 battle to Buffalo coming back home to play in Orchard Park against these Dolphins. But I want to get to the three takeover players of the game. Dying to get to the three takeover players of the game easily. The three easiest adds that I've had to this list thus far this season. Number one, Terrell Bernard. Number two, Greg Rousseau and Leonard Floyd. Now, in any podcast that I appeared on leading up to this season, Leonard Floyd was huge for me as far as a late offseason acquisition. You might not find a better late offseason signing than Leonard Floyd. And truthfully, he has been one of the best players on this defense since week one, filling in for Von Miller, yes, but playing his role, even if Von Miller does come back when he does week 5 next week. We're going to see Leonard Floyd still out on that field playing for the Buffalo Bills at a very high level, which is very exciting in terms of what we've seen from this defense thus far. Leonard Floyd has been great. I mean, he's been a huge catalyst for this front four, and he's provided a level of experience as a pure pass rusher, rather, that he just jumps off the tape. He's been doing it since year one. He's one of 4 players in the league that had 9 sacks 4 years in a row, dating them back the last 4 years. So he's a hell of a pass rusher, right? And to see that expertise come to fruition, spread like wildfire in terms of the motivation that he brings to the defense has been great. And I thought I saw that in spades, obviously last Sunday. So Greg Rousseau goes to kind of that next point, that last point that I just made about Leonard Floyd, kind of spreading the knowledge, spreading the wealth. I think that he is one of those guys, and Greg Rousseau has been one of the main beneficiaries of that. As a player that I've seen him evolve these last 2 years specifically, and when I've been on the podcast circuit, I've talked about Greg Rousseau a lot in terms of my expectations for Rousseau this year is to be the Buffalo Bills sack leader, to lead the Bills in sacks for the 2023 season statistically. And I think that he's got a damn good shot at making that happen. And then number one, easily, the emergence of Terrell Bernard. And I really want to talk about Bernard's breakout performance in depth tonight. So diving into this, it'll probably be the next 5 to 10 minutes of the show. Fair warning. I don't know who would not want to hear more about Terrell Bernard in any way. He's been a very fun player to watch, and it's a unique circumstance because I was traveling down to St. John Fisher to go to the training camp. I thought, who are some of the names that I should keep my eyes out for? Who are some of the numbers I should have my eyes on? You guys know what that means. Who should I have circled? 43, 27, 14, 17, obviously, 4, James Cook, all those guys, right? Leonard Floyd, 56, right? Terrell Bernard was at the top of that list for me because this middle linebacker position for the Buffalo Bills was fulfilled by Tremaine Edmonds for such a, decent period of time these last 4 or 5 years. So knowing that he went to Chicago, knowing that the Bills hadn't drafted a middle linebacker in this year's draft, hadn't signed a veteran middle linebacker in free agency, I thought to myself, okay, Terrell Bernard, he's got to be in the plans here. I know Dorian Williams was drafted more as a weak side guy. So when I said that they didn't draft a linebacker, they did. They just drafted more of a weak side linebacker, not a middle. Terrell Bernard, I thought he was the favorite to win the job. And then he had some injury issues that prevented him from being out on the field during training camp. And there was room for other guys to potentially take that spot, and nobody really did. So it was Bernard's to lose, evidently, and and he never lost it because no one ever took it. So to see Bernard line up there week one, yes, I was feeling like, okay, he might be a little bit behind here because he was supposed to be out there week one. Yes, but he hadn't played much in training camp. He hadn't played, if at all, in the preseason. And man, I have been extremely impressed with the different facets to the game skill set that Terrell Bernard brings to the table. He's fast. He's agile. He is a linebacker that does have instincts, does have awareness to where the ball is at all times, and he can make closing tackles. Closing tackles meaning tackles in big moments to close out games, tackles in opportune moments to shut the offense down and avoid them getting the necessary yards that they need on a third down. I've seen him do it time and time again. And this was a game, frankly, that Terrell Bernard took over. It's the takeover players for a reason, but this was a game where really I thought Sean McDermott blitzed the linebackers more than he has with Leslie Frazier in the last 5 or 6 years. So that's an interesting thought, right? The thought that, maybe some of these guys that have been on this defense these last few years are going to be used in different ways. And maybe they'll be used in ways that they never would have been used had Leslie Frazier stayed on as the defensive coordinator. It's a very worthy thought and one that I don't want to, pin my hat on, but it's one that I think we could see potentially evolve as the season wears on. We could see this defense used a lot differently than what they had been under Leslie Frazier. So let me know your thoughts on that. Give me your thoughts on that. Fire away some comments in the comment section below wherever you are tuning in, whether it's Facebook, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, you name it. Greatly appreciate the support. You guys have supported me greatly over the last 6-7 years. Started this back in 2015, been rolling ever since. So this is a freight train that is not slowing down anytime soon. So definitely Terrell Bernard, Greg Rousseau, Leonard Floyd. Those are my three players of the game, takeover players of the game. And going to the offensive side of the ball for the Buffalo Bills, it's apparent to me that something is happening. Something very important. Something is happening with this offense that I've been begging for the last 4-5 years that, yes, predates Ken Dorsey and goes back to Brian Dable, and that is the Buffalo Bills' lack of a run game. We saw it again this last week. We saw a run game that featured the likes of James Cook, Latavius Murray, and, of course, Damian Harris. And I've always liked Damian Harris. I didn't want to like him in New England, but he was a likable running back. I had him on a few fantasy teams a couple years back. One year, he had a breakout year, 15, 16 touchdowns. There's a lot to like there. Power runner, always gets yards, nifty, shifty. And Latavius Murray's been a constant, north-south runner since he, played for the Raiders and Vikings, and he feels like that was not that long ago, but it was. And he's one of the top red zone running backs of the last 10 years. So very interesting to look at those numbers and know that a lot of the guys that were ranked ahead of him these last 10 years are out of the league, and he is still trudging along and is still relevant, within an offense. He's definitely a role player within the offense that I think Ken Dorsey has used really well. Now, the one running back that I hadn't mentioned yet is James Cook. And, I talked about James Cook last week on the Sunday Sessions show with Swank and Scott on 24/7 Buffalo Fandemonium, which is a show that I'm on every Sunday morning. You guys can tune into my takes on there as well. And I truly mean it when I say this. I have never been more confident in my assessment of James Cook than I am heading into this year. Going into the year, I had hoped that the Bills would make him a massive part of the offense, and I think a lot of signs pointed to that with the departure of Devin Singletary. And obviously, Zach Moss gets traded to Indianapolis last year, and then Naheem Hines, who they acquired, went down, with an injury prior to the season even starting that was not even football related. So a lot of the signs pointed to James Cook being that RB1. And man, his evolution into a superstar is what is happening right now. That is in present time. That's what we're witnessing. I fully believe that James Cook is one of the best young running backs that the National Football League has right now. And you can put a lot of different names in that list, but James Cook belongs on that short list of premier young running backs that have very bright futures ahead of them. And I feel like the game breaking ability, the ability to stretch a run out to the sideline and break it, cut back inside the center of the field. We've seen him do that. We've seen him with the double moves. We've seen him cut and make cuts that are filthy. And I've also seen him lower the shoulder and run someone over necessarily. So if that's required, he will do it. So I love James Cook. He's somebody that I think when you go back to last season, the season prior, and the season prior to that, I've said this before, but I can make a case the Bills should have been in the Super Bowl the last 2 years, especially potentially in the last three, right? And they weren't obviously, but what's the difference now? A lot of people that are not Bills fans that know I am a podcaster, Bills podcaster, I guess you could say, um, they say to me, "What's different? What's going to make the difference between the Bills making the Super Bowl and winning it?" James Cook is the difference. He literally is the difference. They did not have a running back of his caliber in previous seasons, and it showed, and it shows now that they do. And I think that quote unquote freight train, as I alluded to earlier, has to continue. This process of integrating James Cook into the offense has to only grow as the season wears on, because as we get into these November, December months, we're going to need him. We're going to need him out there to take the pressure off of Josh Allen, to take the pressure off of getting the ball to Diggs as much in this horrible weather that we're about to experience, I believe, as we have these last few years. It goes beyond that, obviously, but a run game is extremely important, especially when you're playing teams like the Chiefs, like the Bengals, that you need to close those teams out and wear those teams down. And I think James Cook really showed in crunch time that he could do that. So I'm really excited to just continue to see that evolution take place. So about 20 minutes into the show here, I greatly appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. A ton to discuss from last week's game, as I just did, and a lot to dive into within that game. I really felt sorry for the Commanders fan base. I feel like that team is just in such a state of flux with this new ownership and things of that nature. I'm hoping that eventually you don't want to see a team struggle for too long, unless it's Miami, unless it's New England, unless it's the Jets or Dallas. I think that's the outlier. And I don't see the Chiefs struggling anytime soon, so I won't even throw them in there. But Washington is just such a franchise with a dark cloud hanging over their head. And I hope that better times are ahead for them. And I think there's some things to like on that team, but they're just so far behind in comparison to a Bills team or a Chiefs team or something like that. So, Eagles as well within their own division. So, let's go to a preview of week 4. Let's get right to it. The Buffalo Bills take on the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are 3-0. And much like the New York Jets were prior to Aaron Rodgers ever playing it down for the New York Jets, they were the darlings of the offseason media circuit. Many believed that the Jets would be Super Bowl champs. You can go back and check that out for yourselves if you want a good laugh or two. Much like right now, you listen to a lot of the shows out there, watch a lot of the shows for as long as you can, and you would hear that the Miami Dolphins are the toast of the town. They're the toast of the the NFL, and they're the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs. That's what one ESPN blogger wrote. Name not coming to me, but it's out there. You can find it. So, okay, there is a lot to dive into with the preview of this game that I want to start off with the facts that predate this game. The Bills coming off a 37-3 win over Washington. I just discussed every facet of it. But the Miami Dolphins are coming off a 70-20 point win against the Denver Broncos. And that game was mesmerizing. There is no two ways about it. Either way you want to look at it, whether you're looking at Miami and their dominant offense, running up and down the field, throwing everywhere, doing whatever they wanted, however they wanted, it was mesmerizing. They're fast, they're dynamic, they are versatile as well offensively. They have guys that can do a lot of different things, right? But defensively, that effort from the Denver Broncos was one of the worst single efforts I have ever seen in my 31 years of watching football. I've never seen a defense play so badly that I don't know how to take that game. I don't know what to take from it other than just acknowledging the players that are on the field. It's really all you can do. Acknowledging the skill of Tyreek Hill, that rhymed, acknowledging the ability that Devin A-Chain brings to the table with his speed. Raheem Mostert brings to the table with his speed in the run game. And they do have an accurate quarterback. He's not somebody that is going to wow you at any point with throws like, Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Pat Mahomes. That's not who he is. It's never who he has been. Tua Tagovailoa has always been a quarterback that likes to place the football, find a place for the football. And he's been able to do that with a great supporting cast. It doesn't get much better receiver-wise than a healthy Tyreek Hill and a healthy Jalen Waddle. It just doesn't. And the fact that this team's got another year together, another year in the offense. It's 1 year, older in the offense, less to learn, more room to grow, more to master, right? So I think that this is a stiff test. I won't lie to you guys. I know that this is a stiff test. As much as I'd love to say squish the fish, and I will, I know that this is a tough test. The Bills know that this is a tough test. It was a tough test for the Buffalo Bills last season. They played the Dolphins not once, not twice, but 3 times, and they went 2-1, and they almost, dare I say it, went 0-3 at multiple points during those games. Could have led to, disappointing losses. So Miami's a good team. They're a very rare team in this league. There is not many teams like them that are built the way they are built as effectively as they are. I think they're a hybrid a little bit of San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan as well as Kansas City with Andy Reid, and that's dangerous. I take the San Francisco example due to the fact that they got the versatility at receiver, versatility and speed at running back, which is what San Fran has had these last few years with guys like Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and then in the run game, predating Christian McCaffrey, the run game was okay. Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, now they're both in Miami. Then they go out, San Fran that is, and they go out and they get Christian McCaffrey, which opens up a whole new dynamic to that offense, and that's another story for another day. But the Kansas City aspect is not just the fact that they went out and traded for their number 1 wide receiver in Tyreek Hill, but the fact that the speed and the ability to find these guys open is unlike really anybody but KC and Buffalo. And I'm talking open by like 5 or 10 yards or more. The ability that these guys can create the space within, they're not playing teams that have these over-the-top safeties. And that's the game plan to me. If I'm the Buffalo Bills in this game, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are essential to that over-the-top protection that if these receivers are running deep routes over the field, they need to be contained and kind of paused within the route as they get to that upper echelon of the route, meeting the safety with the corner battling them and the safety with over the top protection. So that's something that I think is a good talking point to talk about with the Bills in respects to how they match up with Miami. Now, the run game, no team has really been able to muster up a run game on the Bills this year. And I say that you really look at week one against the Jets, Brees Hall had one big run, and outside of that, he was kind of nullified. Dalvin Cook, he was okay, but I'd compare Dalvin Cook's performance in that game to Brian Robinson's this past Sunday. He had moments where maybe if they would have got him the ball more, he would have been able to do a little bit more, but they just didn't. And then you look at Miami, and they have a run game that is not really like those teams. You've obviously thrown the Raiders. We shut down the rushing leader, Josh Jacobs, 9 carries, -2 yards. But those guys don't have the speed and the versatility within the speed that keeps Mostert fresh, keeps A-Chain fresh, and keeps the weapons fresh for Miami in general. So I think this is a big game for the Buffalo Bills run defense. And I think they will know, they meaning Miami, that Buffalo's going to go after Tua if Miami makes their offense pass happy. And that's not the way to victory, because if Tua goes down, Miami has no shot. He is as important to that team as any quarterback, arguably in the league. And I don't say that because Tua is so great. I say that because their backup plan is Mike White. And we know how that panned out when Mike White played against the Buffalo Bills. So I truthfully think that this is a game where coaching matters every week, but coaching really matters this week. Sean McDermott has to be dynamically prepared for this offense that is ever elusive and ever changing each and every week. The speed is unlike anything that the NFL has to offer on one team. And that's going to be hard to stop, which is why I see this game being a shootout. I don't see it going any other way in my head. When a team scores 70 points one week and another team scores 37, I don't see it going any other way. And I see it being a go for broke. We'll put our best against your best, and let's let it fly. Let's see what happens. We're going to integrate the run game, of course, again with James Cook. They're going to do the same with A-Chain and Mostert. And I see a game that's a shootout and a nail-biter. And it's one that I do see the Bills winning off the foot of Tyler Bass. I'm going 34-31 with the Bills getting the victory. Now, this game, this early in the season, with the AFC East implications that it has, means everything for the future of the Bills and their plans to get to the Super Bowl, right? With a win, the Bills, I do believe, go on to win this division. With a loss, this could be what impacts the Bills from winning the division and potentially losing the division, and Miami potentially winning the division. This game is so important for the future of this season and the future of this team. And it is on the other side of the coin with the Miami Dolphins. So I think you're going to get your best brand of football from both teams. And with that said, I do believe the Bills are the better team because they have the continuity that they have and the new pieces that Miami has. Yes, they've been great this year, but they have not faced a defense like Buffalo's. There will be a moment in this game we go back and say that was the moment, that turnover on downs, whatever it may be, was the difference that allowed Buffalo to get the 3 points they needed to win this game. So that's how I see it. And I'm really excited for this week's game. It's a massive one, as I mentioned, and I'm even more excited to continue this show Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock and recap all things Bills, Dolphins, right here on the Buffalo Fanbase Network. This show is presented by 26 Shirts. Buy a shirt today and donate to the community. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas. Last and certainly not least, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Take care.